Welcome to the Religious Treehouse. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Jody.
Jody, how are you doing today?
I'm sick. I had to go to the doctor yesterday and get antibiotics, so I don't feel so great,
Cool.
but we're just gonna roll with it. How are you?
I feel fine. No recent doctor appointments for me, but love the whole social environment that we're in right now. Love the whole, state of things. You know how it is. You know how it is. We're just in a great world, and like there's no violence or anything that happens. It's not like we're gonna be like talking about violence today either. So like it's just all hunky dory, going great. Woo!
Two thumbs up from this girl. Let's get into it. We are returning to Terror in the Mind of God, and we are on chapter
5.
5, The Spear of Shiva, the Sword of Sikhism. Now, Matthew, are we touching on religions that we haven't really covered yet?
Jody, I want to make something very clear at the beginning of this episode to our many,
Mhm.
many hundreds of thousands of listeners out there.
Uh-huh.
If this is your first episode that you've ever like listened to of us, stop. Like listen to something else because
U-turn.
other things, immediate U-turn, brakes, put it in reverse, get out of here. Because other times I know what I'm talking about sometimes. Oh, and then there's things like today where like I don't have a clue. Like I took a class. Like let's just like t- bring back the veil. Let's bring everything out into the open. I took a class on religion and violence many, many years ago, and we went through this book. And I know so little about like East Asian religions that we didn't even cover this chapter in this class. The professor said, we don't need to look into this. We can skip over this. We'll talk about something else. And I said, great, that's fine. I don't know anything about this anyways. Fast forward to where we are now, still know nothing about this. This is a gigantic gap in my religious studies knowledge, but we're here anyways. We're going to try our best because maybe someone out there is knowledgeable about this stuff. And if you are knowledgeable about East Asian religions, particularly Indian religions, which is what we'll be discussing today, reach out to us because I would love to learn more.
Yeah, just come on over. We want to have people to talk to about this stuff. We just don't know anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know people,
You
but
know people. I don't know. I don't leave the house.
sure.
The world scares me. I
Of
don't leave
course.
the house, guys.
Right, because of violence. No.
No, that's exactly it. But I am excited to kind of get into this. I don't know. A part of me is also just exhausted though, because we've done so the first four chapters already took it out of me.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well,
this is just sad.
it's very sad, and I hope like on the one hand that what we've been talking about is like new and unique for each religion that we've talked about, but it's also very repetitive
Mhm.
because it's a lot of the same thing, a lot of the same themes that we see throughout the religions. And then so I think next session that we have on this is going to be Buddhism. Then after that, we're going to be looking into some of the overarching themes that have come up. And I think that'll be really fun. I think that'll be a lot of exciting conversations to kind of put what we've talked about in these case studies kind of into theory and understand that. But for now, we're talking about Hinduism and Sikhism primarily.
Yes.
It,
So, brief overview of these religions.
yeah, so the problem with Asian religions and a lot of religions, but particularly Asian religions, is that they're a lot murkier than we in the West would like them to be.
Mm.
We tend to like looking at a religion and say this is Christianity. It has clear cut boundaries. We know this is a something a Christian believes. This is what Muslims believe. This is what Jewish people believe. And it's like, okay, cool. Put these in a box. That is a religion. We look at like Hinduism and Sikh and Buddhism, uh, and it's a lot murkier. The boundaries are a lot wibblier wobblier, and it's not entirely always clear where one religion starts and the next one stops, and all that. So that also means that like doctrines and beliefs and practices are all kind of intermeshed, and sometimes they go in, sometimes they're not part of the other, and it's a lot more fluid than we are comfortable talking about for the most part.
Mm.
And so that can get really confusing especially when someone like me who has no idea what I'm talking about is trying to explain these topics because I don't know. I mean, like I know a little, but like not enough to like verbalize it, which is why we need an expert. Again, if you're coming here for like good, solid education, go to one of our other episodes.
Anywhere else.
anywhere
Scroll and click.
anywhere else, yeah, like if it's about like the Old Testament Hebrew Bible stuff, I'm confident in what I said there, but here we are. But yeah,
Okay.
so Hinduism probably like the oldest religion that we have, like
Mhm.
that's still going around today, but it like goes through many different phases and ideas and ways that it looks. So um there's a handful of like different ideologies and stuff. Dharma, probably one of the highlights. And again, I'm going to be forgetting about things because this is not my area of expertise. But the idea that we have moral duties or there's ethics and ways to be righteous and stuff like that is kind of Dharma. And it's like how you can live the right way. So that's like
Mhm.
a big part of Hinduism, broadly speaking, how you can live the right way, how you can do all those things. There's a lot of variation. I don't know how to get into the details of that. But other aspects, living fulfilling life. Hinduism is generally pretty fond of pleasure, um, whether however that may be, but like living a good, solid, happy life, getting liberation from suffering, um, and there's different paths, different ways, different yogas to do this. So if we want to get into any details of that, we can. If you have any questions, and I can try my best. What are your thoughts on Hinduism before we get into that?
I mean, the base of my knowledge of Hinduism comes from that monologue and us watching Kumare.
Yeah. Well, and Kumare, I think Kumare is a good example of kind of just like general spirituality, Indian spirituality, which
Mm,
is kind of, Hinduism to some extent here or there, because it's not these like definite doctrines. Like you're not going to go to like there's different schools of thought for sure. There's like
yeah.
a handful of distinct schools of thought, but it's not like you're going to go to a Baptist church in Texas and like, okay, you know what all the rules are. It's all going to make sense. Everything's a lot more fuzzy because it's not, westernized as we like it to be.
Yeah. Okay. And then Sikhism.
Yeah, so that is going to be, I want to say 16th century,
Mm,
maybe 17th, I think 16th century. But Guru Nanak. Another precursor before we talk about these things. I can't pronounce any of these words. I read these words and didn't at once think, can I pronounce these correctly? I don't know. This is a lot of like everything I've learned about Hinduism and Sikhism is from like reading. Like I've never like really involved myself in like speaking about this. So here I am. I've read a lot of words and now I'm trying to make them into noises. I don't know how that's going to work. We hope for the best. But Guru Nanak is what we're going to go with is the founder or is considered the founder of Sikhism from 16th century ish. And he came from like a segment of Hinduism. If we like want to ask like scholars and academics, that's going to be debated, especially among Sikhs because they see themselves as very distinct and separate from Hinduism. But it likely came from a branch of Hinduism. It literally means like learners to learn stuff like that. So there's things like that. They're monotheistic to some extent, not necessarily in the exact way that we would think of monotheism
mm,
in the Western Christian sense. It has that root in like Eastern religions, monotheism, stuff like that. Focus on that the world is an illusion of some sort, as we saw with Kumari as well, and then like liberation and stuff like that. General ideas, uh, but yeah, again, not my area of expertise. I cannot highlight that enough.
I find something comforting about some of the ambiguousness in Eastern religions,
Yeah.
the lack of finite at times.
Hmm.
So okay. Yeah. So I just based off those brief little descriptions, I can see where there would be the availability for some capacity for violence.
Yeah.
Especially since we saw that with religions that are far more strict and written out.
Yeah, I mean, like as we've seen, like all religions can find some way to, justify violence to some extent. So whether a religion at its core is pacifist or whether a religion at its core is like inherently violent, it's not impossible and probably fairly easy for any religion to be like, yeah, we can be a little violent, a little violence, a little murder here and there is probably going to be okay if we can find a way to justify it, and that's the case in essentially all religions. But yeah, so I think we can kind of look at a few case studies and be like, hey, these are things that happened, and maybe briefly analyze it if we can, and then call it a day, call it good. Are you ready?
Let's get into it.
Cool. So we have Narendra Modi, maybe, who in the early 2000s was accused of encouraging Hindus to kill like 2,000 innocent Muslims in like their neighborhoods. Another thing that we should mention: India, a big melting pot, a whole bunch of different religions there, primarily Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim. And because of this like multicultural community, as we've seen, a lot of times tensions rise and therefore also aggressions rise. So because there is this plurality of cultures in India, it can be fairly common for tensions to be, to rise. And we see this in like wars that have broken out in like India and like the neighboring countries and stuff because of these
Well, because you have the
differences.
religious component and then you also have the caste system.
Right.
So you have both of those things working. So,
Right. Well, and because, India is primarily Hindu, and the caste system, is influenced by Hinduism,
mm,
that is where, a lot of the strife comes from non-Hindu groups.
yeah.
But yeah, so um there's ethnic tensions between Muslims and Hindus. We're looking at Gujarat, maybe, where like these tensions have risen. And in February of 2020, no, 2002, Hindu nationalists returned to Ahmed Abad, my bad, where Hindu nationalists destroyed a mosque in 1992 as kind of like a pilgrimage. Be like, hey, this is a place where good things happen for us, bad things happen for them, but like, let's remember the good things for us. And on the train ride, it stopped, and we get conflicting reports. Some say that Muslims swarmed the train and attacking the Hindu pilgrims. Later, like the official reports were that the fires were an accident. Newspapers were blaming Muslims, and Modi added like fuel to the fire and blamed Muslims, blaming all Muslims everywhere. And again, this is after like 9/11, so across the world, tensions against Muslims were high. But this resulted in mob attacks on Muslims, and many thousands were murdered and attacked. Uh, and we had like politicians, Maya Kodnani said like we should kill them, and like provided an opening for like mob assaults. So Modi was never like officially implicated, but like they've been banned by like watch groups to enter into the U.S. and the U.K. And has like served as this like symbol of triumph for Hindu nationalists. So there's this definite sect of Hindus that are like, yeah, we hate Muslims, and we can justify this because multicultural reasons are difficult.
Mm,
A bummer.
yeah.
And again, I don't know what I'm talking about here. If you want to get into the details of this, find someone who knows what they're talking about.
Honestly, I can't really think of anything more to say than bummer because this
Yeah, bummer,
this
correct.
just sucks.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so like especially since India became like an independent state in 1946,
Mm,
48,
yeah.
the 1940s, when the British were like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be in control of everything. Um, and
Oh, they didn't think
problems.
that. They didn't think that. Everyone else
You're
told
right,
them they
my bad.
shouldn't.
When everyone else was like, "Hey, British people, maybe you should like let go of a little bit of control,"
Back
and
the
the
F
British
off.
people said, "Okay, fine, but we have to have the British Museum where we steal everyone's culture." And
Yeah.
everyone said, "Okay, fine. I guess we can. I guess we can work with that." And here we are now.
We will repatriate those items.
Yeah, yeah, we have influence over the British for sure.
For sure.
Oh, as if our American museums aren't doing the exact same thing. We
It's
will
so
be
sad.
mad at the British Museum because that deflects the blame from America.
Yep.
Anyways, India is plagued with like religious violence because of all this multiculturalism. And as we've seen with a lot of fundamentalist groups, or I don't love that term, we've talked about that, but as we've seen with these extremist groups, multiculturalism is a problem
Yes.
because it's hard to see how other people view the world. But like another common cause is with separatism, where
Mhm.
people want to like separate themselves from
Yeah.
the country. A lot of parallels between perhaps the Jewish violence and Muslim violence episodes that we've talked about.
Yeah.
But we have things like suicide bombing. So in 1995, there was a suicide bombing at government buildings in Chandigarh, done by the Babar Khalsa, who's like a militant group. And the suicide bomber did it like in memory of Sikh martyrs, and other extremist groups that were like fighting the authorities. So it was done as a way to be like, hey, we're fighting the good fight. I'm gonna do a suicide bombing. Remember me. I'm gonna be a martyr for this. And so thousands were killed in the 1980s, 1990s. Most notably, India's Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1984. And so we have people like Simranjit Singh Mann, who was a Sikh leader and former like police official implicated in the assassination and like dubbed the ringleader through like a confession of one of the assassins, which is like where it gets controversial because that's like the only place where like where man is like implicated in this, and the confessions are contested by many Sikh people as not so much confessions as torture, but that's beside the point. So man goes in hiding after joining these militant Sikh groups that criticize the government, and was caught trying to flee the country, but like no evidence has like implicated him since these forced confessions. Never convicted. He denies his involvement, but it's like, yeah, their deaths are like kind of cool. Not too upset about it. That was essentially Hitler, because there is a lot of disagreement. And I'm not like, I can't pick sides here because again, I don't know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
But there's probably a lot of justified anger, not justified violence, because violence is not justified, but probably justified anger from many people. But man sees this situation as war, and he accuses the Indian government of being bent on committing genocide against the Sikhs. And man too had been like arrested and tortured by the government, or he wasn't like ever like arrested, but like detained. Um, and in that sense, he's been kind of lifted up as like, hey, we really respect this guy by a lot of Sikh militants because he's like gone through the torture and stuff like that put forth by the Indian government.
Okay.
And then there's other like preachers and stuff that have like influenced people, and like they're like promoting like hate of enemies of the religion, who like include Indira Gandhi, and even like some Sikhs that are like, hey, this is okay, like we're fine, like it's not an ideal situation, but like we're making the best of what we can. We're against that. So this hatred of Indira Gandhi and the Indian government is rooted in this like hatred of secularism and opposition to Hinduism, and is like a common view among Sikhs that like secular politics in India is just Hindu cultural domination. And I think we can see parallels to that in other parts of the world as well.
Yes.
Not to like make this all about America, because why would we do that? Why would we only
Oh,
talk about America? But
you
it's
were
not
in
like,
America. I was in the Middle East.
oh, sure, we could talk about the Middle East too, but it's not like no one has accused the U.S. government of being like Christian cultural domination. No, no one would ever do that.
No.
but that's beside the point. So yeah, those are some case studies. I talked through that very quickly because I don't know the details, but I know some of the main points there.
Yeah.
And if we want to know the details, you can read this book, and also talk to someone who knows what they're talking about.
Hmm.
I want to reiterate continually throughout this, I'm not an expert on this.
And I know so much less that I'm trying to be as quiet as possible.
But yeah, here we are. Do we have any thoughts on that so far?
It's another religion that I'm sure once we can start diving into it more, we're going to find all of the beautiful things
Yeah.
inside of it. But this is just a dark side that we're seeing fairly consistently across the board. Every religion is capable of.
Mhm. No, like if you're interested, like I know a little bit more about Sikh than Hindu.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's true. But like if you're interested, you the listener are interested in like learning about modern Sikhism, Valarie Kaur is like a Sikh activist and she has amazing books that are like super readable, very accessible. Um as kind of like an example of how she practices her faith. And I think uh great reads. Like you should definitely read like some of her stuff. Uh and also I think like you know when you were in like school
Yeah.
and like you had math classes and
Uh-huh.
like you could do the math, you're like, wow, this is good. But
Yep.
then like, when you like tried to explain the math, you like couldn't do it.
Mhm.
Like you could do it yourself, but you couldn't like put it into words
Yeah.
because like, you didn't have like that level of knowledge.
Obviously.
Like that's like how I feel about this. Like I know this stuff, but I don't
Mhm.
know it well enough to like put it into words to like,
Yeah.
be on a podcast. So I think at some point in the future, before the year is up, that's gonna be my goal. Is I'm gonna like organize my thoughts and like we can have a coherent thought about, some East Asian religions because I think that's important to talk about
Yeah.
and not something that we talk about a lot. We in America tend to focus on Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and maybe if we're feeling fun, Scientology. But
Mhm.
but no, I think this is really fascinating if you get into it, and we just don't get into it much.
No. Well, thank you for this, Matthew.
No, I'm not done yet. Jody, calm down. I've got plenty to say. Maybe not plenty. Um, but like we can talk about like some justifications that have like come from this. So because of like these Sikh movements have like resulted in the death of many of the members, especially like younger men. Uh, the way that this is justified is by seeing these deaths as martyrs, which is a common theme that we've seen. Uh, it's very common in like these in like especially Hinduism and like these East Asian religions is to kind of look at like fighting in battle as like this common theme that runs through history. We have these like great Hindu epics and stories and tales of like warfare and battles and that are really fascinating, really like great reads and great stories to tell and listen to. And a lot of them like really involve like warfare and death and stuff. So because that is kind of a central idea, a martyr in that sense, someone who's dying in battle, is a way to kind of justify these modern examples of death and violence as well. Other arguments are like the soul can never really be killed. It's like people's moral obligation or dharma of like the warrior caste to like by definition kill and do violence. So like that's another way it's justified. And then we have like other people like Mahatma Gandhi who was like these stories are metaphorical. Maybe we shouldn't do violence. But then Gandhi was also like, but maybe we can do a little bit of violence if it like stops bigger violence. So there's always ways to justify violence. Um,
And, if Gandhi said it.
yeah. And Gandhi is controversial in his own other right, and we can talk about that at some other point.
Oh,
But
no.
um, and then there's also Sikh history, who often uses violence as like a defense against its enemies, which is like kind of paradoxical because like Guru Nanak, the founder, is like this gentle soul who's like really big on like peace and love, the good stuff. And then
Mhm.
like a lot of his successors were like really good warriors. So there's kind of like this paradox in Sikh of like violence and peace and stuff like that. Valarie Kaur kind of
Mhm.
describes it as a warrior sage, and I think that's a really beautiful way to like kind of modernize it and think about like how that can happen modernly. Read her stuff; she can talk about this way better than I can. Um, but yeah, and then there's like after India's independence from the British, there's like this big disillusionment that came from the Sikhs that like, hey, we want our own majority state, but like that didn't happen. So that they see like not violence as like a defensive act as being okay generally. And we've talked about that in other religions. Sorry, I couldn't breathe there for a second.
You're so fine. Don't
uh,
die.
but we see that in other religions too, where like we if we have to defend ourselves, then it's okay. Again, nothing new here.
Well,
Just
yeah.
war theory happens all over the world.
Um, this reoccurring theme of needing a entire country that follows one religion seems to be a factor in there being issues.
It's definitely not uncommon. If you have a group of people that are like, everything has to be this exact way, and this exact way happens to be just how I'm doing things, uh, problems arise.
And it seems everyone's susceptible to this.
Yeah.
Every religion, every color of person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of the same song and dance each chapter.
Yeah.
Although
And
this one I felt was more politically intertwined. Like they all have political reasons, but I felt there were more political leaders.
yeah, I think that could be the case. Because a lot of the political violence in India or the religious violence in India is a byproduct of, the national government being, largely supportive of Hinduism over other
Mm.
religions. And thus, when you feel marginalized and you want your voice to be heard, one way to do that, for your voice to be heard, is through these acts of violence. And that is why we have these militant groups pop up, because it's a way for them to not feel so marginalized.
And yet the majority will look at them and say, why are they complaining? They're fine.
Jody, save that for our next episode.
Okay.
But yeah, that's all I have to say. Please, if you know what you're talking about, tell us where we're wrong. Tell us the many mistakes that I made, and give us resources. I want to read more. I love to read. Tell us things to read. Tell us who we should talk to. If you know what you're talking about, reach out to us. We'll talk to you. We'll record a conversation and follow us on all of the social medias, the Instagram, the Bluesky, the TikTok, the Facebook, the YouTube, the Spotify, the Apple Music, the Amazon podcast thing, and send us an email at the religious treehouse at gmail.com. And have a nice life.
Bye.
Bye.